I think we can start with the opening refuge prayer. And so whenever we begin a Dharma practice, we have the three excellences that we want to maintain. Excellent in the beginning, excellent in the middle, and excellent in the end. And excellent beginning means that one sets the motivation of bodhicitta. And then excellent in the middle means you maintain that mental attitude. And excellent in the end means you dedicate the merit. So with that in mind, we'll do the refuge and bodhicitta prayer. Sanjay Chodam Soki Chodam La Janchu Padu Dani Kapsuchi Dagi Jinso Gipe Sunam Ki Drula Pinjia Sanjay Dropa Shu Sanjay Chode Soji Chodam La Janchu Padu Nagi Kapsuchi Dagi Sego Sipe Sunam Ki Dola Pinja Sanjay Drupashu Sanjay Chodan Sogi Chodamla Janchu Badu Nagi Gyabzuchi Dagi Jinso Gipe Sunam Ki Dola Pinja Sanjay Drupashu.
Lama, there have been some comments that there were echoes.
Okay.
Make sure your second computer is muted and sound is off, and it's not playing a sound.
Yeah, my second is off. Okay, so welcome. Thank you for coming and attending these talks. Today, we'll be continuing the talk on the Great Path of Awakening. So let's see, let me do the screen share. No. Okay, let's see. Yep, looks good. So we're continuing the talk on the Lojong mind training slogans. So the text that we're using is specifically The Great Path of Awakening, the classic guide to Lojong by Jungchum Kongtrul. I point that out because there's different translations over the years, so I wanted to make reference to the specific text that we were using. And the way that the text is sort of broken down with the different mind training slogans, sometimes the numbering can be slightly different, and sometimes the translation can be slightly different on the wording. So a little bit of review. The Lojong is a contemplative practice in Tibetan Buddhism tradition, which makes use of various lists and aphorisms, slogans, which are used for contemplative practice. The practice involves refining and purifying one's motives and attitudes with the goal of developing relative and absolute bodhicitta. The mind training slogans originated with the Tisha, roughly 982 to 1042, and then he entered Tibet in roughly 1042. He's associated with the Kadampa tradition. And if we break down the word Kadampa, the ka means the canonical literature spoken by the Buddha, while Dham is an abbreviation of Nyang, which means Upasadesha instruction. As such, extracting the essential basically means extracting the essential essence of the Buddha's words and using that as commands by the guru. So they take the instructions as direct guidance, and there's not a lot of gray or interpretation in the texts. The text as a whole, there you go. It's broken down into 7 main points, and I put those in the slide. So to try to avoid some confusion, the way that sometimes they listed by points, sometimes they listed by slogans. So this is a way of looking at it that like point 1, it has one slogan, that's the parentheses at the end there, and point 2, slogans 2 through 6 and 7 through 10. And we're on point 3, which is transforming bad circumstances into the path, and that's slogans 11 through 16. So I think when you see the high level, it kind of helps a little bit in terms of how things are broken down. So these slogans will be under transforming bad circumstances into the path of enlightenment. Now, the reason I give some of the background with the dates with the Tisha is to try to help set the tone in this time frame when the text was being transmitted. The way that you would study as a Buddhist is part of your training and your studies would involve a logical analysis of external phenomena to generate certainty about the emptiness of all phenomena. So in that time period, Mahamudra texts were not as widely taught. That came into play in the 8th century and with Saraha, and later with Tilopa and Naropa in our lineage. And Nundro is very recent. So just to kind of understand that the emphasis at this time was for studying of emptiness, looking at the external phenomena through logical reasoning. And Mahamudra tends to emphasize emptiness using the mind directly. There's just a little difference between the two. Ways to relate to sort of relative and ultimate bodhicitta. Relative bodhicitta is the display of our mind, whereas absolute bodhicitta is the mind's nature. So sometimes the practices will emphasize the relative and sometimes they'll emphasize the absolute. And I'll say the same thing, but I'm going to change the words a little bit. Relative bodhicitta is aroused and dissolved with our thoughts, whereas absolute bodhicitta is the state of primal wisdom in which all the movement that our conceptual thought have dissolved into absolute space. Sometimes the way a particular teacher phrases things can make a big difference in just subtle word variations. So let's see. I'm going to start with a traditional story. Long ago, there was a Brahmin called Ravi who examined his mind at all times. Whenever a bad thought arose, he would put aside a black pebble, and whenever a good thought arose, he would put aside a white pebble. At first, all the pebbles he put aside were black. Then, as he persevered in developing antidotes and in adopting positive actions and rejecting negative ones, a time came when his piles of black and white pebbles were equal. In the end, he had only white pebbles. this is how you should develop positive actions as an antidote with mindfulness and vigilance, and not contaminate yourself with the smallest harmful actions. So the traditional story helps sort of illustrate this idea that we're using the mind training slogans to work with our mind, whether it's relative or absolute bodhicitta, to change our habits, because that's what essentially karma is habits. So any of these Lojong mind training slogans, you can help to integrate that into your mind, into your habitual way of thinking. So, for example, to modernize it a little bit, we might take, for example, last time's main slogan, which was "Be grateful to everyone," and in modern times we call this a gratitude practice, which is very sort of common in our culture right now, especially like the help self area. Gratitude practice is very popular. So at the start of the day, you might think, well, today I'm going to practice gratitude, and then throughout the day, you're mindful. And in being mindful of what you're doing, how you're interacting with people, find something to be grateful for. Generate that attitude, and then at the end of the day, uh, when the day is over and you're ready to go to sleep, you may take a moment and contemplate, how have I integrated this slogan uh, into my mind today? Sort of taking stock of yourself. Um, some people like to journal, some people don't. That's something some people like to write, and writing helps to focus the mind. So this is a way of integrating the slogans into your mind stream and into your your habits, and changing the way that you think, or the way that you uh, perceive the world. So in this, generally speaking, in the mind training slogans, you'll see that there's a couple basic Buddhist principles at play. First is mindfulness. So with relative bodhicitta, you're aware of your thoughts and your intentions and your feelings. There's a component of self-discipline. You're training your mind gradually, and you're establishing new habits. So through mindfulness, you prevent yourself from indulging in the old habit, let's say being not grateful, and insert the new habit of being grateful. You're also bringing in karma, and by recognizing the thoughts that lead to particular actions, and those actions have consequences, you're starting to work with purifying the negative habits, and accumulating merit, and setting new virtuous habits. And last, the whole idea of transformation is the example with the stones, the black and white stones. Through your awareness, you're seeing the change in your habitual way of thinking and processing the world. So I think that's a good sort of framework for how to work with the slogans, so that it doesn't just become sort of the accumulation of knowledge. The goal, especially with the slogans, is to put them into play to have an impact, and to change your mind, to work with your mind, and develop yourself spiritually. So today's particular slogans, as I said, was point 3. So this is transformation of bad circumstances into the path of enlightenment. And the particular slogan is seeing confusion as the four kayas and unsurpassable Shincha protection. So this is the way that I think I just approach this uh, is the four kayas. I'm going to explain this a couple different times in different ways. And I think going through that, uh, it'll help solidify it into something that's more usable and more relatable. Otherwise, it becomes a little too abstract. So we'll see how this goes. So the teachings on the four kayas is a way of talking about the empty nature of all phenomena from an enlightened being's point of view, representing different dimensions or bodies of Buddhahood, ranging from absolute reality to how a Buddha appears in this world. So in the first pass, I'm going to use the very technical sort of explanation. This is from the sort of highest perspective, from more like at the Buddha level, so to speak. So first you have Dharmakaya, that's truth body. And in essence, this is the absolute formless reality, the mind of the Buddha beyond duality. Its nature is emptiness or shunyata, an ultimate truth. The one who perceives it is only the fully realized enlightened beings. By analogy, they say it's like space, vast, non-obstructive, and the basis for everything. So that's the first kaya. The second is Sambhoga kaya, enjoyment body. So in essence, it's formed the subtle body that will teach advanced bodhisattvas in pure realms. By nature, it's visible to highly realized beings, meaning you'd have to be a bodhisattva. Activity-wise, it's continuous teachings of Dharma in exalted realms. Examples include Vairochana Buddha and Amitabha in Dewa Chen. So the third is Nirmanakaya, and this is the emanation body. In essence, this is the manifest form of a Buddha appearing in our world. Its function is to benefit ordinary beings through direct interaction. Examples include Buddha Shakyamuni, Guru Rinpoche, and His Holiness the Garwai Karmapa. So the fourth is Shrubhakaya. And this is the nature body or essence body. In essence, this represents the union of the first three, emptiness, luminosity, and compassionate expression. It's sometimes described as the inseparable nature of the first three that we described. So that's the four kayas from sort of the highest perspective. And that description is meant to be really short. And to go deeper would be something more that maybe Kempos can do, but it becomes very abstract. And I'm trying to focus on the more practical, what can be done aspect to relate to the teachings. But there's still very vast and profound teachings. They cover a lot of things in great depth and profundity. So next, I'll describe the four kayas again, but this time from the perspective of a meditator. So it might sound a little different, but it's the same. So the Sanskrit word for emptiness is Dharmakaya. The empty Dharmakaya is the nature of all things. But this emptiness is not a void. Appearances manifest out of it. The manifestation is known as the Nirmanakaya. We can think of the empty nature as a movie screen and the appearance that manifests on it as light from a film projector. There is no way to separate the projected appearance from the screen. Similarly, emptiness and appearance are always together. They are like two sides of a coin. Whatever appears is empty, and whatever empty appears. The inseparability aspect is called the Sambhogakaya, and finally, all the kayas just one experience of mind. This aspect of union is Sarvabhakaya. So from the meditator's point of view, from our perspective of working with our mind where it's at, we emphasize appearance and emptiness. So the Nirmanakaya and Dharmakaya aspects of the four kayas. There is no, I won't go down that. Skip. So third pass. I'm gonna use an analogy that's common, and hopefully this will help make these a little more relatable. The analogy is that of open sky. Don't use modern physics, okay? Just a normal open sky. And in that sky, you might have a storm. You might have a hailstorm, a thunderstorm. It doesn't matter. In this process, the storm doesn't change the sky. It doesn't destroy the sky. It doesn't scar the sky. It doesn't change it into non-sky. Now, if I change it instead of a storm, and let's talk about a pleasant day. So you have a perfect day, perfect temperature, perfect wind, perfect sun. The elements don't change the sky into golden sky, into perfect sky. It leaves no lasting impression. So if we tried to talk about the hailstorm without the sky and just said it happened, it's nonsensical. It has to happen somewhere. And the same is true for the pleasant day. We say we had a pleasant day, but we try to exclude the sky from where it occurs. It's crazy. So in this example, the sky represents the Dharmakaya, or the emptiness aspect, and the weather represents the Nirmanakaya. And their inseparability of the two phenomena, the Sambhogakaya. And the fourth essentially is doubling down on what was already the other kayas, the inseparability of all of the other kayas. So if the analogy makes sense, if you can relate to it, then you can start to appreciate that the sky has qualities, that emptiness essentially has qualities. Emptiness is not a void of nothingness, so to speak. but instead that sky has qualities. The sky has openness. The sky has unimpededness. So now you can sort of relate to someone like His Eminence Taisitu, who, when he talks about Buddha nature, which in essence is empty, he'll talk about how Buddha nature uh, is the source of infinite possibilities. So hopefully that makes more sense, that emptiness doesn't mean sort of a lack, but it's just referring to this quality, this aspect of phenomena and of oneself. So there are mundane sort of indicators of emptiness. Um, the mundane sort of examples can include birth. We don't see consciousness enter the body when life starts, when, at the time of birth. And the same thing about death. We don't see consciousness leave the body on one's passing. Also, with dreaming, in the dream, you have, maybe depending on the dream, you could have a family and children and uh, a dream house, a dream horse, a dream car, all of these things. And then when you wake up, they're gone. But nonetheless, when you're in the dream, there is an appearance. So there is something there. There's an appearance and an experience of. And the last sort of indicator is sort of called knowing. Um, Sometimes we call this a senior moment. It's when you sort of like you have an image in your mind, let's say like a pencil, and you know this image has a word, but you can't remember what the word was. So there's a knowing, but you know something's there, but you're not sure what it is. Um, so if that, hopefully that helps to relate the four kayas back to the idea of the shunyata. And essentially, what this particular slogan is after is saying that ultimately everything is empty. So if you're going through negative circumstances, the ultimately that negative event cannot harm you in some ultimate way, like the sky example. The storm doesn't change the sky into non-sky, it doesn't scar it. So that's what it's talking about as far as the uh, unsurpassable protection of Shunyata. So um, I'm going to kind of go through a traditional explanation, and with the understanding that I've presented, see how it goes. um, when there are appearances in the mind, we fixate, we cling, and we solidify the appearance and create a subject-object duality. The goal in meditation is to remove the fixation while not trying to suppress the appearance or the fabrication. So this is important in meditation. We're just sort of being aware of when we meditate. And our issue is we fixate on the appearance and make it more than it is. or we try to fabricate, and sometimes this is called a like an no, can't think of the right word. Uh, I'd say mantra, but I don't want to interfere with the Tibetan meaning of mantra. Um, so repeat it as an idea that we want to cling to, and we kind of force it up in our mind. So to continue, everything in this world of appearance, both the external phenomena and beings within, such as the object of impairment and the agent of impairment, are only deluded perceptions of our own mind, as mere deceptive, deluded appearances. Both subject object will cease within moments, with no time either to injure or to engage in any negative or any negation or affirmation. So even conventionally, nothing exists as an object or agent of harm. On the ultimate level, no phenomenon is primordially established. Like the center of a spotless sky, all phenomena are one. Since self is awareness devoid of substantial reality, and the agent of harm is an awareness devoid of substantial reality as well, neither exists as the object of impairment or the agent of impairment. Everything is empty, and emptiness cannot be attacked by emptiness. Just as the eastern part of the sky cannot harm the western part, they cannot injure each other. Therefore, since your current perceptions are illusions of a deluded mind, the self, the object of impairment, and the illness, other than being constructs of your mind, nothing can be established in terms of identity. Because you have grasped all your concepts as real, as true, as something separate from the mind, and as fault-ridden, this has produced all the suffering of cyclical existence. Apart from your own conceptualizations, nothing outside is an obstructor. Therefore, your own conceptualization is the sole object of elimination. So, based on the other parts of the talk, hopefully that resonated. It's sort of like try to introduce the concepts, and then if they stick, then the traditional explanations that you may be reading on your own in different texts will start to solidify more. In terms of practice, since I started the talk about, it's about setting habits, in the beginning of the day, maybe it's to enhance your understanding of emptiness, and maybe throughout the day you contemplate it. And one way to do it would be the impermanent nature of things. So you can think of how your particular situation didn't happen or wasn't occurring, a year ago, and won't be there a year after. So this can help reduce fixation on what's going on in the mind. The best way, of course, would be to have experience of the nature of your mind and be able to use that. Not being able to use that, one of the ways would be a callback to slogan 6, which is in daily life, be a child of illusion. So you sort of, with ongoing mindfulness, you acknowledge that there's an appearance of the negative event, and you sort of try not to fixate on what's going on, that it will pass. Sometimes they say, I'm kind of repeating what was already covered in slogan 6. Sometimes they'll say a saucer or illusion, trying to maintain the attitude that in the saucer or illusionist approach, it's, the saucer knows that the illusion that they have created through their spells or their illusions are there, but they know it's not as it appears. So the illusionary elephant or the illusionary horse, there's an appearance, but it's not an actual horse. And this again may help to reduce the fixation on what's going on at the time. Using impermanence, or also you could say perception, would be another way, since in a given event that happens, a negative event, different people will observe that same event perception-wise differently and process it differently based on their karma. And you've probably seen this already happen in your own life. You've had events happen, and everybody walks away feeling different about the event. So again, this helps reduce the fixation on the negative event. So that's 14. One other thing I'll touch slightly is if the cloud analogy holds, this is 4 lines from the lineage prayer. And so the first one, the essence of thought, is Dharmakaya, as it is taught. Dharmakaya is emptiness. So it's simply saying that thought is empty. It has no substantiality. It's not permanent. And the second stanza, they are nothing whatsoever, and yet they arise. So it's lacking this quality of being permanent. Thoughts do arise. So it's just acknowledging that there is something there is an appearance. To the meditator who reflects upon the unobstructed play of the mind, meaning if you can actually meditate and start to work with your mind, this essentially is you're getting into Mahamudra sort of practice. Grant your blessing that the inseparability of samsara and nirvana be realized. So if you can really rest in the nature of your mind, then samsara and nirvana, they're like the sky and the example of the storm and the sunny day. From the Dharmakaya's point of view, it's the same. From your experience point of view, they're different. So I thought I added that in because I thought that would be helpful, because the question has kind of come up about that stanza. In terms of one's practice, when you get to the point that this essentially is a reference to Vipassana or insight meditation. So think of it as something to come as your meditations advance. So number 15, 4 practices. The slogan is 4 practices are the best of methods. So as we get into this a little bit, first, just sort of refresh some ideas about karma, because it's kind of where this goes. So I'm just going to pick a few key points about their importance about karma. First, I'm going to quote the Dharmappada, verse 127. Not in the sky, nor in the ocean's mist, nor by entering a cave, nowhere on earth is there a place where one may escape the results of one's deeds. And the second quote I'll use is from Arya Nagarjuna, in the precious garland. From non-virtue comes all suffering, and likewise all the lower realms. And from virtue come all upper realms and all happy rebirths. So the points here are tied to karma are that once karma has been created, it must manifest. You can't escape it. It eventually will come to fruition. And also that a virtuous deed uh, will lead to happiness, and a non-virtuous deed will lead to suffering. So the idea here, virtuous deed essentially is merit or positive action. So one wants to cultivate positive action, and one wants to remove negative actions that one has committed in the past, is where the four practices are going. Once a karmic action has ripened, it's gone. Whether it's a virtuous action or non-virtuous action, once it's ripened, it's gone. The consequences do not last forever or in perpetuity. So the focus of the practice is to reduce one's sort of fixations. And so the first one is the accumulation of merit. So merit refers to positive karmic potential that one has accumulated through virtuous actions, thoughts, and intentions. We need to cultivate wholesome mental states with a kind heart, which helps to create positive inner and outer conditions needed for Dharma practice. Merit is more of a habitual pattern or a way of being. It's not so much a bank account where you can deposit and withdraw funds. The accumulation of merit helps determine the type of being that will become in this lifetime and the next lifetime. Merit can be created with such actions as generosity, ethical conduct, discipline, rejoicing in others' good deeds, making offerings, dedicating merit to other beings. And merit helps to purify negative actions. They don't ripen into suffering. They can help because now you have them, when things arise that are negative, you have a more virtuous mindset. And so that helps reduce the intensity. So that's the first thing, is build up the positive side, build up the merit and the virtuous mindset that one has through habit. And then on the other side is confession. And confession is a way to purify the negative action. You're tying it to karma and emptiness, as opposed to an external entity when we get into confession. So the purpose first of confession is to help purify the negative karma. Once the negative action has been purified, either it won't happen or it'd be less intense. It helps to restore vows, such as the lay precept vows, the bodhisattva vow, monastic vows, or tantric samaya. And it helps to strengthen mindfulness and ethical awareness through reflection. If you're confessing, why are you confessing? What are you confessing for? What didn't go well, so to speak? Traditionally, there are four opponent powers as part of the confession. Power of reliance, taking refuge in the Buddha, the Dharma, the Sangha, and generating bodhicitta would be an example. Regret, feeling genuine remorse for the unwholesome actions that you've engaged in. The power of resolve, meaning you make a firm decision not to repeat the action. This is to not generate that, continue to maintain that negative habit. And last is remedial action, performing virtuous deeds, reciting mantras, making offerings. There are specific purification practices. Vajrasattva is one. And there's also the 35 Buddha's confession, sometimes called the three heaps. That's a sutric practice that's sometimes done. The third and fourth point, ritual offerings to evil spirits. They're harmful beings, and some cause disruption. You're traveling to meet someone. There might be involved a negative force. So you can view it as evil spirits or ghosts, or you can view it psychologically. So psychologically, it may be the idea of somebody's out to get me, sort of a paranoia mindset. So the other force would be the karmic debt. So we have unresolved debts to others. We've behaved poorly, intentionally, unintentionally, and our actions with the other has resulted in a karmic debt. Sometimes this can be a good way to contemplate things when things are going bad negatively, and consider that the reason that this is negative event is here is because of a karmic debt. And then it makes it easier to deal with that situation or accept that negative situation. Generally speaking, the offerings and rituals are intended to completely remove the negative forces that arise from unwholesome actions and karmic traces and dispositions. In the sense of the ritual offerings, it's more of an attitude of bribery. Sir, please take this offering and leave me be. So sometimes you'll see this in the form of a torma. Torma is sort of a ritual cake. It's sort of made traditionally from barley flour and butter. It has sometimes very simple shapes, sometimes very elaborate shapes. If you've been to KTD, you've probably seen some that are quite elaborate. The most common one you may have run into with KTD would be the feast tormas or soak torma. And that's said to have great blessing. So if you're there and there's a soak torma available, taking a piece of the soak torma, receive the blessing from that. And last, the fourth is ritual offerings to the Dharma protectors. Essentially offering tormas to the Dharma protectors and supplicating them, please ensure that no obstacles arise in my meditative practice. Remember the promises and oaths that you have taken in the presence of the Buddha or other realized beings. Dharma protectors are not wisdom deities necessarily. They're not. Sometimes they're just regular beings that have made promises. Depends on the situation. So those are the four practices for 15. And basically, in a nutshell, the idea is to accumulate more virtuous habits and to deprecate or remove your negative habits. Okay. 16. Whatever you meet unexpectedly, join with meditation. So when adverse circumstances strike, you want to train in the two awakened mind, basic, relative and ultimate bodhicitta, right then and there at the moment. The emphasis of the slogan is to train our minds to apply these practices as quickly as possible and not to wait for perfect circumstances. Sometimes we dream of the ideal situation, like great meditators such as Milarepa, who lived in a cave and subsided on nettles. We kind of dream of the perfect situation where our health is perfect, our food is perfect, we're not bothered by mundane concerns or problems. And that just never happens. It's not really practical to set up a schedule on where and when to develop bodhicitta. It's just doing it at that moment as best you can. And the more that you've worked with the 60 different slogans, the more it'll be approachable and workable in your situation with your mind and your particular karmic disposition. So the four principles that started with, repeat them again, the mindfulness, so being aware of every thought and intention that we're engaged in, that helps you uh, meet whatever is coming up at the moment with your meditation. So being mindful. The discipline is very important, training the mind gradually. Habits are habits, and they're hard to change because they're habits. As we talked about emptiness and shunyata, everything is empty, so there's no permanent obstacle. It's just developing new habits. In the West, there's a whole cottage industry on habits, changing habits, micro habits, habit stacking, just on and on. So, karma, uh, basically recognizing that thoughts lead to actions and the actions have consequences. That if we're somebody who's always angry, no matter what comes up, we're going to see that through that angry veil of that angry mindset. If we have one that is of love and compassion, then that's how we'll see the actions coming to us, is one of love and compassion. And the last, transformation through awareness. Even these very ingrained habits can be transformed into something that's more virtuous. Since, as we talked, everything is empty, there's nothing preventing your mind from adopting new habits. So that is the talk. And then I wanted to leave some time for questions. And I will do my best to answer them. And I put the two links up there for the Dharma paths for the archives. That's come up before, so I wanted people to have those links. So let's see. How do we want to do questions? Do you want to?
Well, what we found in the past is if people put their questions in the chat, then we can use that as a method of queuing and make sure that everybody gets their fair turn. If we do it with people jumping in conversation, it can get out of control.
Okay. I'm echoing. Did we fix the echo?
We got feedback that it got better as soon as you made the change.
Okay. Okay. I'm looking at the right chat. I don't see anything.
No, no questions so far.
I don't know. Did I put everybody to sleep? Snoring. The strong habit.
Oh, there's a question. Is there any guidance for making tormas or other offerings for the karmic debtors or the Dharma protectors?
I know for offerings and so forth, some people can simply use cookies if you haven't been trained on the actual making of tormas. If there's an interest, that may be something that we can get into, but at the moment, do you do any training on the tormas at KTD?
There have been some for people that are making them for KTD. I don't remember any teachings on public teachings.
Yeah. So practically, I'd say mostly different offerings like cookies or muffins and so forth would be good. As far as the karmic debts or the debt protectors, that would be dependent on the particular practice that you're doing.
I'm going to bring the Chinese and the Chinese translation so that we can have any questions there.
这个问题
We have another question. Other than bribery, is there other types of understanding from the perspective of bodhicitta or kindness to the evil spirits?
The attitude of bribery or that of loving kindness to other beings that may be in situations that or develop situations that involve their suffering. It kind of depends on the individual's motivation. For some people, it's just easier to think of it as bribery. But if you're able to think of it as bodhicitta, that you're making this offering so that they'll benefit and that they can eventually practice the Dharma in a future lifetime, that would be great. So it has more to do with the different explanations or reasoning for different sort of dispositions. Sometimes it's easier if the situation is negative and you're suffering to think of it as purification, and other times it's easier to think of it as developing bodhicitta or use it to develop bodhicitta. So it really just depends on your situation at the time. It would be best, of course, to use it to develop bodhicitta and make the offering with the intention that being benefits and develops connection with the Dharma.
那这个问题就是，对于我们用所谓供养的方式来去调和这个副业，那这个地方呢，就是说我们要如何去解释它？那它可能比较好的方法来解释，就是用这个菩提心的方式来去说，例如供养这个精灵或者鬼神的，因为我们希望透过这种发展这个菩提心的方式呢，给他们这些供养，那希望就是这些鬼神能够 透过这些供养呢，让他们能够发起菩提心，然后呢不会再去伤害这些众生，这是最好的。当然，另外我们可以用来解释，就是用透过这些方式能够将我们的这些恶业能够得到净除。当然最好的方法就是用菩提心的方式来解释，会比较好。So.
And we have another question. Would you advise on a practice on confession? Can it be a confession just to oneself, or is it best to confess to another practitioner?
Well, the confession process, one of them was to have a support. So your confession, your support, the power of support would be the Buddha, the Dharma, the Sangha. If it was the three heaps or the 35 Buddhas, part of the way that confession works is your support, or the one you're confessing to, is the 35 Buddhas. And then you call each of the Buddhas out by name and then confess to them. So they essentially become your confession sort of partner. It's more of the attitude of, or develop an attitude of renunciation, so you'll not repeat it.
关于这个呢，就是说，忏悔业障的这个，可不可以能够给予多一点点的这个解释？那这边讲就是说呢，可能就是说我们讲到他这边讲的问题是说要么就是自己，或者是跟别人哪一个比较好。那我们讲说，通常忏悔呢是有四力，四力里面有一个叫做这个支持的力量，支持力量可能就是讲佛法身是最好的，或者像例如说我们在35佛里面，就是对每一个佛，就是跟他们讲，然后呢忏悔，这就是我们讲的，这是需要这个力量，所以呢，最好的这个支持力呢，就是所谓的佛法僧等等这些圣真。那说。
That's all we have at the moment. I don't know if anybody wants to add anything else.
It was kind of a heavy talk. So the kayas are not easy to lean into.
关于这个佛的四身，可能比较大家难以了解。
If there are no other questions, just got a comment on, I appreciate the example of the two colors of stones.
That's good. Good to know. I try to find a few of the traditional stories to help break it up. So.
这边讲说，他们感谢他用了2种颜色的石头来去说明善行业的这种累积跟他的习惯的改变。Lama Rob 说他的想借用这个故事的方式来解释我们讲修行祈要。那说。
There was a question just came in. Can you go over the difference between merit and virtue again?
Merit essentially is virtuous action. So what's important is we dedicate the merit at the end of our activities, because one of the aspects of karma was that once your action has come to fruition, it's gone. So by dedicating the merit, we essentially tie that virtuous action to the benefit of all sentient beings and simply make it last forever. is the idea. So it expands.
这边关于讨论就是关于所谓的福德跟这个美德的这样的区别。那他都讲到，就是说我们讲到福德，其实它基本上是一种行善的一种行为。那我们将这个行善的这个行为呢，因为善行做完了以后呢，它的功德通常就消失了。如果不做回向的话，但如果我们将回向的话，我们回向给所有的众生能够成就佛法，那这个善就跟这个所有的这些善行，就是这个菩提心愿的这个善行合在一起，所以它能够一直会留存到所有的众生都能够成就佛果，所以是透过回向能够保存，这是我们讲的善行，就是福德这样一个福德的这个不同，它就是善的行为。那说。
Any more questions? There will be an opportunity for more questions later. We will be having one more question and answer session at the end of the teachings in this series. So if you come up with anything else that you would like to ask, keep track of the thought and bring it to that last session.
他这边讲说，如果说现在大家没有提问题的话，还有一个机会，就是到最后所有这个修心的法门讲完的时候，还有一次大家提问的机会，所以可以把这个经记下来，然后以后可以再提。那说。
Looks like that's all the questions. Lama Rob, anything you want to add to this or close with?
No, just thanks for everybody coming. And I hope that the information was helpful and you can incorporate it into your practice.
很感谢今天大家能够听到这次这个来参加这个法会，然后呢，希望大家能够将这几个偈言能够带到生活上，能够用到生活上，能够跟这个生活结合。那时候
If you're a sciencey type person, there's the second law of thermodynamics, and which explains how processes go from order to disorder over time. It's called entropy. That kind of describes the different principles, meaning if you don't habitually work to change your habits, they tend to break down.
那个再从这个科学角度上说，如果我们不去，就有一个名词叫做这个 entropy， 就是热能。如果我们不去改进我们这个业力，及它可能产生影响后，将来我们可能就会崩解。老师。
Got a series of thank yous and a comment. That is really interesting.
Some of this stuff, I mean, if you're sciencey minded, it's in line with modern science. Emptiness is in line with modern science. They're pretty much there, but they won't admit it. And you talk about interaction between gravity, space, and time, and things like that. So, but it's not a traditional explanation. So go there. But yeah, a lot of the science stuff does sort of translate over.
所以如果大家比较有科学的倾向的话，大家都知道说这个，例如说我们讲这个因缘，跟这个跟我们讲的科学里面讲的，事实上这个是完全一致的，只是科学上面呢，可能不见得说跟这个就是跟 愿意跟那个佛法对上，但事实上就是这个样子，就是因缘，我们佛法里面就讲的因缘和合，事实上跟这个科学是完全一致的啊。So
There's another comment. That would be an interesting talk.
Yeah.
I'll toss in one tidbit along that lines. We have a book in the bookstore that's written by a PhD in neuropsychology, and the subtitle of the book is How Neuropsychology is Catching Up with Buddhism. It's very much that spirit.
His Holiness the Dalai Lama used to have in something called the Mind Body Conference. He would talk with scientists, and some of those talks were very interesting. That one of the distinctions, like for a materialist perspective, is that the brain generates consciousness, and from the Buddhist perspective, the only cause of a given moment of consciousness is a previous moment of consciousness. So from a cause and effect point of view, consciousness is an endless string. So he was asked, could a computer, become sentient? And his wording was careful, and he said it could contain a consciousness, which was nicely said. It's like, no, it wouldn't create it, but it could contain it.
Very interesting.
Smart. No.
So we do the dedication prayers?
Yes. Be good.
Okay.
Gyao kun ni je ron su kama pa. Gyao kun trin le jidu kama pa. Gyao kun du so wan ko kama pa. Bogen dren dro trin la shep tan so. So nam di tam che sabani. Da ni pedro ma pachi ni. Giga Nichi Belon Trapai Sipe Sole Drowanyo Drosho Jampa Pavo Jinta Kipada Guntu Zampo Diya Di Gente Deda Kunji Jiso Da Lochan Iwa Tida Tamje Ratonyo Sanje Kusuni Pejin Labdan Choni Mingyo Di Pejin Labdan Jindun Mije Don Pejin Laki Jinta Yuan Mona Drabashu Kama Dijin Legi Gyawe Jin Lepe Kama Paten Tempe Nipodi Jota gung gyao gyao jin ki mi ta pa ra bel pa wa tra shi shu